Now they exist in both canon and legends. In canon, the details are pretty scarce. We know that they are red in their skin colour, they're naturally attuned to the dark side of the Force, and some of them were actually part of the Sith Order, due to some of the species being part of an organisation called Dark Seekers, which actually was a part of the Sith religious order. That's all we have in canon, but in legends, we have so much more. For instance, their homeworld is Korriban. They were known to be violent, and like canon, they are naturally attuned to the dark side. They had bone spurs appearing here and there all over their bodies, and they also had clawed hands and feet. Their tendrils on their cheeks can also move in a particular way depending on their mood, making it quite easy to read their body language. Now they practice in sacrificial beliefs for their gods, and they were initially ruled by a monarch, a king of the Sith, until the Dark Jedi came along and changed the hierarchy. Now when the Dark Jedi were cast out from the Jedi Order, this was all thousands of years ago, they then discovered Korriban. The Sith species revered these Dark Jedis as gods. At some point later, they interbred, creating these hybrid species. Over the generations, slowly the pureblood Sith species were pretty much dying out through interbreeding, which of course would lead to their eventual extinction. Now in Sith society, they had a strict social structure with different castes, and these castes were like different groups or classes that would determine the role or status of the person in the community. So for over 100,000 years, the Sith society separated their people into these castes. Some castes were even referred to as a type of subspecies to the Sith. You had the Zaguric castes that were skilled and intelligent, or the priestly Kasai caste, or the warlike Masasi caste. But even though these guys practiced in a type of primitive way, their technology was actually pretty good, using ways like alchemy and sorcery. And as most of their species were naturally force sensitive, they would imbue people or things with the dark side, sometimes with the help of talismans that they themselves created, which would give them either more power or better concentration. They even made ones that could accelerate their healing or act as a shield for incoming attacks. They were also shown how to create holocrons from the Rakuten Empire, as we know, to record their knowledge. But like the Sith, they added their own spin to it by imbuing it with the dark side. Now in ancient history, the Sith species as a whole were largely divided. They existed in clans and they were normally at odds with each other, but a single Sith named Adas united them all. He would rule over them as their king, as their god, known as Sithari, and his reign would go on for the next 300 years. Sometime later, the Rakatan Infinite Empire find their way to Korriban. At first, they shared and taught the Sith their technology and how to use it, but this was a ruse as they later attempted to conquer them. War broke out, but the Sith prevailed with the sacrifice of Adas. They then went on to take some of the Rakatan's resources, which gave them the hyperdrive technology, so now the Sith could make use of their neighbouring worlds. But since the death of their king, infighting broke out once again, all others trying to claim the throne and proclaiming themselves as the new Sithari. But because of all the war, their world ended up becoming devastated, so they moved all of the Sith over to Ziost as their new capital, pretty much making Korriban a ceremonial tomb world. But over time, the Empire grew and grew until we eventually come into the Dark Jedi that visited Korriban. The Dark Jedi killed their king, they then took over. They were then worshipped as gods, interbreeding happened, and over the course of many generations, the pureblood Sith became eventually extinct through interbreeding. And that's the Sith. Hope it helped.